Yo, everybody, it's the first Friday of December. And on Fridays, we do top fives of something Marvel Snap related. And this time, we're looking at the top five of the most underrated cards in Marvel Snap because it's the season of giving. And I want to give a little bit of love, a little bit of something nice to those cards that never really get to see play, that everyone puts in their collection and just shelves it. Well, we're taking these toys off the shelf and we're putting them in some decks with some statistics here. Okay, so we got when it's in the deck this season and its seen percentage and also its win rate. Okay, so that means I'm looking at just this season, so any balance changes or anything like that are all going to apply. We're going to see how often you guys are playing these cards. You can't lie to me here. And the stats are pulled from snap.fan. Okay, so go check them out. You can see all the stats right there. You can even upload your own and track it that way. It's great. Now, these top five are just ones that I thought were very interesting to talk about. You're going to see in the honorable mentions, there's some that have even crazier percentages. We're going to talk about those as well. But please comment below a card that you find is very underrated, maybe one that's working in a lot of your decks that you never see anyone else play. I think it's a really beautiful thing in Marvel Snap how there's so many cards and you collect them at a different pace, so you end up using cards that maybe you didn't really want but you just received and you're like, okay, I'll experiment. And then you start to find value with that card. And then you notice that nobody else is playing it, but all of a sudden you're winning games because of that card. So the reason I want to know about your journey is because everyone has a different journey in Marvel Snap and have probably experienced the collection in a different pace. So I'm curious as to which cards were underrated in your mind as you were progressing through the collection road. So comment below. All right, let's get into this top 5 Fridays. Top 5. Number 5, Groot plus Guardians of the Galaxy characters. Okay, I'm cheating a bit here. I know that it should just be one card, but I think we can all safely say that they all have very similar abilities, if not the exact same, just different power totals. So they all kind of get lumped into this awkward position of if you don't actually hit the effect, right? You don't play at the same place that your opponent plays on that turn, and you don't get the power boost, then they feel bad. And for that reason, you don't run them. And some can find other places to have value. I think Rocket Raccoon, for instance, gets buffed with like Kazar and he's cheaper, so you might as well throw him out. If it hits, it hits, but if it doesn't, it's fine. Especially he's a 1-2 ratio and gets the bonus of +2 power, so it's okay. Star-Lord can actually get discounted with Sarah, and I find it gets run in a lot of flood decks because you play Sarah on 5, and then you can throw out Star-Lord on 6 with a bunch of other things, and probably reliably know where your opponent's going to play a card on turn 6 and hit that effect. So it's actually becomes like almost a 1-5 in those specific scenarios. And then Gamora actually can be really valuable, especially recently Galactus just came out, and that can be a really nice combo like the chat was telling me the other day. But she also just has a lot more value because you can Daredevil and then play her on 5 and get a really big power swing. So I find she is an okay spot. But the two outliers that you're probably thinking of are Groot and Drax. Now, the reason I'm highlighting Groot over Drax is because of the win rate. Drax is one of the worst cards in the game, and he's hardly ever seen. But Groot also is never seen, but when he has a 53.34% win rate. He's actually one of the highest win rate cards in the bottom 15 of seen percentage. And what I mean by seen percentage, okay? So it has to be in the deck when you queue into a game. It doesn't mean when you lose or win and the cards in the deck. It just means what you brought to the table and then what happened from there. It doesn't even have to be played, okay? So it's the widest range of statistics. If you want to see more detail, go over to snap.fan, but it's a lot of the same. Essentially, he has a good win rate, but he's not seen a lot. So I've decided to make the case that Groot is a good card. And not only that, I think he's going to be really good when Silver Surfer comes out, which is the next season pass card, which I'm pretty stoked about. He gets +3 power to all of your 3 costs. So if Groot hits and then he gets +3 from Silver Surfer, this is a 3-9. We might start seeing a lot of Groot. So if I try to dig a little bit deeper, I think the reason that Groot is better than Drax is because he's only a 3 cost, right? You play him on 3. If he whiffs, and it's not too big a deal. You can maybe recover in the later turns. Whereas Drax, the opportunity cost is just too much. If you whiff on Drax, it's too painful. You can't really come back on turn 5, 6. That's all you have to make up that ground for only playing 4 power on turn 4. That feels really bad. So I don't know what to do with Drax. He's in a rough spot. That's why he didn't make this list. But Groot, I think, is an underrated card and is only going to get better with the next season and possibly future synergy afterwards. Number 4. Ebony Maw. So Ebony Maw is actually in quite a few decks. The reason I put him here is more because of the perception that he is a terrible, terrible card and one of the worst, especially when you're just starting this game. When I started playing, I thought he was absolute trash. And he was actually back then. He used to be 6 power. 7 power has really helped him out, but he's a lot better than he seems on the surface, especially when you get to Series 3. You get a lot more options of getting cards over to his location without having to play them there. I'm talking like Ultron, Doctor Doom, and then we even have Spectrum buffs. He's been rocked in the ongoing decks, right? So you just throw him out there. Know your opponent has to commit resources there to beat his power total, but then surprise, bam, with the Spectrum to give him a little bit of extra power and maybe get over that hump. So Ebony Maw is actually a pretty good card despite his constraint, right? You can't play this after turn 3, and ongoing you can't play cards here. That's a double whammy. You got to draw this guy before turn 3. But funny enough, I find more often than not, if I draw him later, it's not that big of a deal. Maybe there's the loss of a potential better card being drawn, and that kind of sucks. But otherwise, I'm just like, okay, well, I'll just deal with my other options in hand, and it just almost makes my decision making easier. I specifically really like him in this deck right here. It's the drone deck. It's all about just stacking as much power at one location as possible. Should I say ongoing effects, and then playing onslaught. So like Kazar, Blue Marvel, Patriot, these sorts of things. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's way too many cards. You only play a few of them, right? So let's say you play Kazar, Blue Marvel, and then you Ultron Onslaught because you magicked elsewhere, right? Okay, so you get a bunch of drones, and Ebony Maw is actually going to help out because he's just got already so much power, so you can play him on the early curve when you have nothing else to do, and then you do all those crazy combos elsewhere. It's a really fun deck. It's tricky to pull off. You need to ramp into a few things, but wow, the power totals can get really out of hand. And this is just an exaggerated example of Ebony Maw value. I think, like I was saying, that ongoing Spectrum buff deck, that works just fine. Even in combination of White Tiger Odin, that's a great combo. Just to get a bunch of tigers out, they go over to Ebony Maw's side. You can get up to 21 power pretty easily at an Ebony Maw location. So at first glance, this looks like a terrible card, incredibly restricting. Why would I run him in my deck? If you're in like the first stages of Marvel Snap in like Series 1, you're probably going to have a hard time to fit this in, and it might be worth omitting this card. But as you get a few more resources to help you out and get things over to his location, you're probably going to start to see that Ebony Maw is pretty legit. Number 3, Dagger. Oh my goodness, I'm excited to talk about this one because look at the win rate to scene percentage. Crazy. That's so low and yet such a high win rate. And the reason I'm excited to talk about this card is not specifically the card itself, although she is fairly exciting, but it's actually because of move decks and the perception that move decks are really weak, and they are, but then they can surprise a lot of people, and they have some pretty crazy power totals when they do work. And I think that's the kicker here. Not a lot of people are bringing move decks to the table, so it's not seen a lot, but they're winning. And maybe it's just people that are maybe a little bit more experienced and can win with move decks. I know a lot of early players in like Series 1 have a lot of success with move decks because maybe opponents aren't adjusted to what's going to happen, or they don't have the available counters to stop what's going to happen. That could be a viable reason. But nonetheless, Dagger is a 2-cost 1 power. She gets +2 power for each card that's at your opponent's side when she moves there, right? So if your opponent has 4 cards and you get Dagger to move over there with like Cloak or Iron Fist or however you do it, she's going to get +8. That's a 2 for 9. Incredible value. But we're not even done there yet because you can move her again. It's not just a one-time thing. So you move her a couple of times and the value just continues to grow. Really, if you move her once and you hit a location with 2 cards, that's 4 power. She's a 2/5. And like that's a great stat line. So she's got a lot of good things going for her. When I got into Series 3 and I saw this card as an option, I was stoked to get it because I was really loving move decks and I thought this would be a great piece to add. And then when I actually got her, I was like, I just don't know. You kind of rely on your opponent on playing a lot of cards. So that's why this deck that I have here has Green Goblin. I think that's a very synergistic card as well. To just get things over there so that when you do move Dagger, maybe she hits that. and gets a little bit of extra power. You could even run Hobgoblin. But otherwise, this deck is just the sniper deck that I call it because it doesn't run multiple man, but it's a move deck. And the reason being is that you want to hyper focus your move cards with Torch, Vulture, and Dagger, right? You just want to focus on moving them around, not multiple man. Don't clog up the board too much and just shift them around. So anyways, I think the deck is really fun to play. It's a pretty standard move deck with maybe a few different options here and there. And Dagger works great in it. And when she works, she works. She can get so much power. That's the thing about move decks. They can get high power totals, but all it takes is one bad location, one Professor X, or who, I don't know, you name it. It's like they get stuck. But the win rate is there, and I think it's pretty fascinating to talk about. And I want to end that conversation with saying I still think move decks need a couple more pieces, but I think they're only one or two away from being very scary in the meta. I don't know what those pieces are, but they're getting close. Number 2, Red Skull. Red Skull is such a cool card. He's one of those cards that has incredible power output, probably one of the best stat lines in the game. Maybe not, I don't know exactly, but like 5 for 15 is a lot of power. We talk about cards in the 6 drop section, and you got like Infinite who gets 20. You got Destroyer that's at 15 now, Giganto that's at 14, Magneto 12, Hulk 12. This guy's got more power than a few of those cards, and he's only 5. He only costs 5. Okay, so the kicker is that ongoing enemy cards at this location have +2 power, which is a big deal. Because if your opponent has 4 cards, you're giving them 8 power, which essentially makes Red Skull a 5 for 7. A 5 for 7. So that hurts a lot if that comes up, if that's a possibility. But there is more than meets the eye to this card. You have card synergies like Zero, right? Who just removes that terrible ability, and you got yourself a 5/15 card. Great value. Or even better yet, I'd love this combination, is Venom. You gobble him up to get all of that sweet, sweet power and eliminate that ability, and also get a Destroy, which can trigger your death, or just work with like Taskmaster to get him out and copy the new Venom that has 16, maybe even more power because you put other cards there. Oh, it's just such a fun deck. This one's really fun. The Zero Skull, it's essentially the Destroy package with a few high power cards like Typhoid Mary and Red Skull, and then Zero thrown in as another safety measure if you don't get Venom. So you can either Zero these cards to get rid of their negative ability, or you can Venom and gobble them up. And his win rate is 51.75, which is not crazy. It's close to 50%, but I see a lot of negative comments about this card, so I thought I'd bring him up. I think he's actually pretty good. He's really fun to play with too. One little announcement that I want to make: if you're thinking about getting any of these Series 3 cards and you're wondering, should I spend the 1,000 tokens on them? These ones in particular, maybe not, unless you really, really want to try them out. Because I'm telling you, they're decent cards. If you have the right combination synergies for them, they're going to do great. But at the end of the day, you guys got to spend your tokens on what you really want to play with, what's going to be the most fun. That's the best tip that I have for you. And the last combination I want to talk about is Shang-Chi. Anytime there's a location that gives extra power, there was the throne room just this past week, right? So anytime there's something like that, Red Skull gets even better value because you can play Red Skull on 5, give them the boost maybe they need to get over that power threshold so that you can bam, Shang-Chi them in the face. It's pretty fun. It can be a nice little combo if you're going for a control style to get even more value out of Red Skull. And then usually if you can destroy 1 or 2 cards, he'll hold his own. 15 power is no joke. Number 1, Polaris. All right, this is my pick for the most underrated card. I think this card is so good. I love playing with Polaris. Such a great card. And I see a lot of negative feedback on it. A lot of people not really knowing where to put it in their decks. But it's a disruption tool. One of the best ways that I like to use it, and by the way, she's a 3/5 on reveal move and opposing 1 or 2 cost card to this location. One of the best ways to do this is if your opponent is playing that really annoying armor ongoing destroyer deck. You can use Polaris to move armor off, or any of the other cards that they've been building up if they're running like Ant-Man or something like that, right? But it's super satisfying to pull armor away. Another really satisfying combo, let's say if you're sick of destroy decks, then they throw that Bucky Barnes down. Well, then you Polaris and you pull Bucky over. and but right as they're about to Carnage, and then Carnage is like just about to eat. He's got like his fork and his bib up, and he's all ready to eat, and then boom, his meal's gone. You snatched it right before his eyes, and he's a crying little baby at that location. So bam, Polaris, super fun card, really good value. 3 for 5 is a good stat line. We see that often, like Deathlock and stuff like this. Like, very good stat line. There is the negative effect of actually bringing over one of those cards to your location, right? That can be a positive and a negative. It will backfire, right? There will be the odd time where you give your opponent that little extra bit of power that they needed, and it's unfortunate. But I really think that in most scenarios, it's going to disrupt your opponent. They're probably trying to do some sort of gameplay. They put those cards at that location for a reason. If you move them, well, that's going to throw them off their game. Not to mention there's synergies like with Fist Tower, another location, or Kingpin, who destroys things on turn 6 if you want to go that route. Not the craziest place, but it's definitely something that could work. But also Green Goblin. So the reason I like playing Green Goblin with Polaris is that you can put the negative power there and then pull their cards over to something that already has a negative effect. So you kind of essentially clog them up with 2 cards at that location, and Polaris is 5 to carry her own weight. So I like those in tandem. And then also Miles Morales Spider-Man. When you move the card, that counts as a move, discounts Spider-Man. So then on turn 4, you can play Spider-Man and another 3-drop. And then another synergy that I was thinking about was Titania. You know, what if she gets into an awkward spot and she's locked away at a different location, but you want to yank her over so that you can play something else to get her to move over to your side. So you Polaris and something else, and then I think Titania would move over to the different location, to the Polaris location, and then the other played card that you played might actually activate Titania to flip her back to your side. I don't know, it could be a big power swing. Mechanically might not work like that, but at least you get Titania to the location that you want. Or better yet, you ruin your opponent's game plan because you sent Titania over to that location, but they're like, okay, well, I'll just leave that. I'm going to keep stacking here, my game plan, my ongoing things or whatever. And then you Polaris that other location, bringing over Titania. It's just like a guaranteed way to give them a 1-drop. It's kind of like when you do Viper and Hood. That's another good combination. You put Hood down, -2 power, he's a 1 cost. You Viper to give them the Hood, and then you can move the Hood with Polaris. I think what holds people back from this card is that it is random. So it's similar to Arrow. A lot of people ask, okay, which card does Arrow prioritize when she moves it? It's going to be random. And I'm pretty sure Polaris is random. It's not like which card was placed first or if it was the last card played or anything like that. It's just going to be one of the 2 or 3 1-drops or 2-drops that are on the field, however many, and it's going to randomly take one of those and pull them to her location. Anyways, I just think that Polaris is really good. Again, this list isn't an argument for that these are the top 5 meta-breaking cards or top 5 must craft. No, these are underrated cards that can make a deck a little bit better, that can actually provide good value every now and then, that are just not being played. But the top 5 is just the top 5 that I got here. I got some honorable mentions, and let's get into them. All right, and here we have the honorable mentions, and I have the percentage in deck and also the win rates for each respective card. These are just a few that really stood out to me numerically. So let's get into it. First one is Hawkeye. Look at that win rate. Now, I'm pretty positive this is because he's a starter card and you win all the time when you first start Marvel Snap, because you're playing against bots. It's not until like rank 30 do you actually play real humans, and then you're probably going to start to lose. And maybe by then you took Hawkeye out and he just sits there with an incredible win rate. So I think that's the scenario that we have here. But nonetheless, to maintain that win rate is pretty good. And he's seen in a decent amount of games, only 1.3% of the time. But he's a decent value card. You know, you get 3 power. It's not too hard to pull off. You know, you just got to play another card there. But you're probably doing that anyways on your turn too. So it's three power for 1, and then maybe even Kazar synergies and stuff. So he's a pretty legit card. I put Dr. Octopus here, and you'll notice that he's the only sub 50% win rate card. I put him here because I you know, he always comes up in my videos. People always think that I'm underrating him, and maybe I still am. But he's got a 47.83% win rate and only in 0.98% dex. Now, it's very possible that everybody's putting this guy in the wrong deck and they're losing and it's just not working out, or they experiment with them but they have a trash list to not make use of his ability. Gosh, I just feel like so many times it's like 50-50, maybe even worse because he's a 40% win rate, but like you just play him, and then boom, Infinite comes out and your opponent snaps and you retreat, like, because it's just awkward. But he does have utility every now and then. I just wanted to put the stats there because I got like a thing against Doc Ock. Typhoid Mary is similar to Red Skull in that she has a negative effect, works well in the 0 decks and that sort of thing, but she only comes in at a 50% win rate, but she's seen less than 1% of the time. Maximus is a card that I almost wanted to put in the top 5. I have a lot of success with this card. Letting your opponent draw seems like a huge negative. More often than not, it does nothing. I don't even care about it. Or maybe I just don't notice it because my opponent is drawing those cards and has more tools afterwards. I don't know, but I find him a very good card. It's just good power for cost. And he's only seen 3.3% of the time in a 52.79% win rate. So not too shabby for Maximus. Then we got Morph. Had to put Morph here because he's just pure randomness. 52% win rate for Morph. It is a total gamble when you play him. You just kind of go, well, I hope it's better value than any other 3-drop. And then boom, it's like a wasp. But you know, like every now and then it's Infinite and you win the game. So he's not too shabby and he's pretty fun to play. Rhino is one that is talked about a lot, and I saw it come up in my chat a lot when I asked about underrated cards. He's at a 50% win rate and 1.24% scene percentage. So, you know, like he's good for getting rid of those negative locations, but most of the time locations are negative for both you and your opponent. So getting rid of it doesn't really hurt your opponent that much. But there is the odd situation, and I think that's why he hovers around the 50% win rate, which is a pretty healthy place for him. Juggernaut is like a fan favorite, and honestly, I think he should have a higher win percent because like this is such a good card. On turn 6, you play this. If you just want to make sure your opponent doesn't commit resources there or put power there, and boom, he moves them off. He just says, see you later, get out of here, go elsewhere. Even better is you combo him with Storm. So you play Storm on 3 and then you Jug on 4. Any cards that they try to play there to win the flooding location get moved. And you probably insta-win the location if it works out that way. So Jug is a pretty great card. I wanted to put Goose here because I really like Goose. I think Goose has a lower win rate because people forget about the effect and then they're kind of tied on their locations. It happens to me frequently. but Goose is pretty fun. It really shuts down your opponent's plays. Maybe they were waiting to commit that big, heavy resource on turn 4, 5, 6. Now they can't because you played Goose on an earlier turn. Also has the ongoing tag, so it can work out really well in the Spectrum ongoing decks. And then we got to talk about the no ability guys. So many people think these are trash, and I get it. They don't have an ability. When you start the game, it doesn't make sense. It's the first thing you cut because 1, it's not very fun. It doesn't do anything. And 2, it doesn't seem that good. It's just like maybe power for value, but like, I don't know, sometimes you'll run into cards that almost have similar power totals but a positive effect. So why do I run Abomination? I just got Wasp in my Series 3 chest. This is trash. What do I do with it? Well, I'm here to tell you that these are actually good cards. Believe it or not, no ability is a mechanic in Marvel Snap, and there is only really one synergistic card, and that is Patriot. But otherwise, sometimes not playing an ability is a good thing because you'll just mess yourself right up. Sometimes just playing straight up power is the way to go. And Abomination is a good example of that. He's rocking almost a 55% win rate. I was shocked when I saw this. I was like, wow, I got to put him in here now. And he's notoriously one of the worst no ability cards. People, even when they were playing Patriot decks, would maybe tech in Thing, but usually it's the earlier ones like Shocker, Wasp, Misty Knight, that sort of thing. And then you'll go with like an Ultron or a Doctor Doom at the end. Or even Hulk doesn't get seen all that much. But Abomination kind of fell short. Whereas look at this, he's winning. And maybe again, this is another scenario like Hawkeye because people are playing with him early because you get him right away and he's in those starter decks. That could be the reason. But then if we look at Wasp, who's a similar no ability card, she's rocking almost a 53% win rate. Now she has a little bit more utility because she's a 0 cost. So you play her in like Lockjaw decks and she cycles out cards. Fantastic value there. Being able to be played on turn 6 with any other cards, and if you're doing Patriot shenanigans, she ends up just crazy value. You can get like a Wasp out for like 4 power for 0 is really good when you can also play a 6-drop on turn 6. So she has a lot of value in other respects. So I wasn't too surprised to see her win rate be decent. If anything, I thought it'd be a little bit of higher scene percentage because I find I see this card pretty frequently and I like to add her in a lot of my decks. But anyways, I just wanted to say the new ability cards are a little bit better than they seem at first glance, and they're only going to get better as we get more cards with no ability synergies, which I'm super stoked for because it's kind of disappointing how Patriot's the only one that directly interacts with them. I'd like a little bit more, a little bit something else. All right, and that's going to do it for this Top 5 Fridays. Top 5. Guys, we're doing this every Friday. We're doing new locations on Tuesday. We're doing custom cards on Sunday. We're doing all kinds of theory crafting with the new cards. It's fire. It's such a fun time to be playing Marvel Snap. So snap, subscribe, and I will keep you guys updated everything related to this game because I love it so much. And anyways, guys, I will catch you next time.